and adoption of the same calendar structure for the 2013-2014 school year. Dr. Bogner.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, essentially, the calendar that is attached is the same calendar as we followed for the last several years. The only real change on it is the starting date is August 6th. Next year, we'll find ourselves in a position of having to decide whether school will start on the 5th or we're going to move it up to the 13th, and that will depend, or the 12th, that will depend on how the days fall out. You'll see that nothing other than a few shifts in dates has changed. The last day of school for students is the 23rd of May, for teachers the 24th of May. It includes a fall intercession, it includes a spring intercession, and a 2-week winter break. So essentially it's the same, and if there are any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Dr. Bogner, how does this compare to the Phoenix Union High School District calendar? And we
I actually didn't bring that with me, but I actually have a calendar where we've highlighted the Phoenix Union dates. We don't completely overlap exactly, but we're pretty close in terms of, and I can give a copy of that to Dr. Boyle, and she can share that with you. So we've got it colored out where we're the same, where we're different.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Bogner, did you also compare this calendar with our neighbors? I asked because there's a lot of concern, a lot of question all the time about mobility, and I know our students don't just go from Creighton schools to Creighton schools, they sometimes come to and from our neighbors. So have we...
We did not.
We did not. Okay.
Other than Phoenix Union.
Right. I think that one's super important. Any further questions?
I move the governing board adopt the academic school calendar for the 2012-2013 school year and adopt the same calendar structure for the 2013-2014 school year.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. The next item on our agenda, moving right along, is the new national school lunch program guidelines. Dr. Boyle.
Yes, Linda Doherty, our Director of Food Services, has information for you this evening. Sorry, but it's a dark for you guys to have it. Ready? My name's Linda Doherty. I'm the Director of Food Services. And tonight I want to present to you the new nutritional standards or guidelines for the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. I'm going to take what is essentially 80 pages out of the Federal Register and try and break it down for you and into a little nutshell and highlight what the guidelines are going to be that we are going to have to start following. Just as background into this, the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act was signed into law in December 2010. This called for comprehensive changes to the school nutrition program. The act required USDA to update school nutrition standards to reflect the most current dietary science. In mid-January of 2011, the USDA published a proposed rule in the Federal Register to update the meal patterns for the National School Lunch and School Breakfast programs and to align them with the Institute of Medicine's recommendations, which were published in 2009 in a document that was called the School Meals Building Blocks for Healthy Children, and to also align them with the 2005 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. The end of January of 2011, the 2010 Dietary Guidelines for Americans were released. So these kind of happened in sequence. In March of 2011, the USDA issued a notice seeking public comment on the need to modify the proposed rule to reflect the 2010 Dietary Guidelines. Over 130,000 comments were received on this one ruling. Overall, the comments were generally more supportive of the proposed rule than not. The changes took into account that the last update to school meal standards was over 15 years ago. During that time, there's been tremendous advances made in understanding human nutrition. The timing of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act and the USDA changes are critical to help us combat childhood obesity as well as addressing the problem of childhood hunger. For many children, a school meal is the only nutritious source of food they count on. And in our district, where over 90% of our students are eligible to receive free and reduced meals, that's really a big impact there. The final bottom line on this is that the ruling becomes effective March 26th, and compliance with the new ruling begins on July 1 of this year. I'm going to give you some of the key changes of the lunch program. We must now offer a daily serving of fruit. Fruits, they can be fresh, they can be frozen, without added sugar, they can be canned in light syrup, water or fruit juice or dried. And if we use fruit juice, it can only be 100% fruit juice, and it can only be credited to no more than 1/2 of the fruit's component. Vegetables must be offered daily. These can be fresh, frozen, canned, or dried beans or peas. All vegetables are credited based on the volume served, except for the leafy greens. And this is a big change. 1 cup of a leafy green vegetable will equal 1/2 cup as the component, whereas now it's straight across. It's 1/2 cup of a leafy green vegetable equals 1/2 cup.
Ms. Doherty, what is the reason for that
It's to go along with the dietary guidelines.
from IOM?
And the dietary guidelines of 2010. Dried beans and peas may be counted as a vegetable or as a meat component, but not both in the same meal. So you can't have, like we frequently serve bean burritos, we can't count it as the meat component and the vegetable component. The vegetables that in the dark green group are things like broccoli, romaine lettuce, spinach. The ones in the red-orange group are squash, carrots, tomatoes, sweet potatoes, of course your dried beans and peas. The starchy vegetables are like corn, green peas, white potatoes, and other vegetables are like celery, cabbage, green beans, and zucchini. We also need to offer, increase the quantity of combined fruits and vegetables. In the past, fruits and vegetables were together as a component. Now they're separate components. They will be separate. Other key changes at lunchtime: offer a daily meat alternate plus weekly ranges. The minimum is 1 ounce of meat with a range of 8 to 10 ounces weekly, which basically boils down to 2 ounces of a meat or meat alternate every day. During the first year of implementation, at least half of the grains offered during the week must be whole grain enriched. Breakfast is the one meal that many major changes were done to. A meat alternate may be offered after the minimum grain requirement is met. The majority of the breakfast changes will take place beginning with the school year 2013 to 14, and except for the new milk requirement, where all milk must be low-fat or fat-free.
And we already meet that, do we not?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. They expanded it out because of the whole grain requirements at breakfast, so that the manufacturers can have more time to reformulate their products. In the third year of implementation, which is the 2014 to 2015 school year, students must select a half a cup of the fruit component for the meal to be counted as a reimbursable meal. And on that, it must be fruit. For example, like a half a cup of fruit juice that now currently counts as a half a cup of fruit. Under the new guidelines, that can only be credited as a half of the fruit component. Breakfast will now be included in our administrative reviews that are done. In the past, it hasn't been. And again, with the exception of the new milk requirements, but we currently meet that.
What are the administrative reviews?
They're reviews that are done by the Department of Ed, and they're required. They currently are being done every 5 years, and they're moving them up to every 3 years. The key changes at both lunch and breakfast is that there will be one food-based menu planning approach to the way we plan our menus. Currently, right now, there's 4 different kinds of menu planning that we can use. The one that we use now is called enhanced food-based, which is very similar to the new guidelines that we'll be going to. Fruits and vegetables under the new guidelines will count as 2 separate components. There will be that daily requirement for fruits. Under our serving methods, which we currently use offer versus serve, which means that at lunchtime we have to offer 5 different components, which is meat, milk. The new guidelines will be fruit, vegetable, and a grain. The students must select 3 for that to be a reimbursable meal. One of those 3 requirements must be a fruit or a vegetable. So every time a child goes past our point of sale, they need to have a fruit or vegetable component on their tray. Weekly grain ranges are part of the new guidelines. And in the 3rd year of implementation, all the grains offered during the school week must be a whole grain product. One of the other key changes is only fat-free or unflavored low-fat milk can be offered. Currently, we do offer this. Our chocolate milk is fat-free, and our strawberry milk is fat-free for our students. There are new calorie minimum and maximum levels. For kindergartners to the 5th grade, it goes anywhere from 550 to 650, and 6 through 8 is 600 to 700 calories for lunch.
That's just lunch, that doesn't include breakfast.
No, that's just lunch. Breakfast, they have set calorie requirements to be breakfast K through 5 is 350 to 500, and 6 through 8 is 400 to 550.
How do you enforce that of a student coming through of what their calorie is, or is that based on like an average take?
It's an average for the whole week.
Okay.
When we do a nutritional analysis of our menus, and when we do that, we look at past history of what the students have taken and base it on that. And so it's an average for the whole week of what they do. So some days you could be a little less, some days you could be a little more, but as long as it averages out for the whole week, you're good with that.
So from now on then, are people who are working in the food service staff, are they going to have to know what a student's grade level is as they come through? And do we have multiple grade levels all doing lunch together?
Yes, we do. It's all over the board. It would be really nice if the kids came
Yeah.
in that way, but it doesn't always happen
Sure.
that way. So what we will strive to do is we will probably more likely go towards the higher end for the K-5, which is at the lower mid-range for the 6th through 8. So that,
Okay, so you'd still have the range has enough overlap that you can,
right, there's overlap in there
Okay.
that we can hit that.
okay, so
Without-
staff's not having to determine you're in this grade and this is what you can.
Right, because they don't have to determine like, okay, these are kinders, so I use this one size scoop, and oh, here come the 8th graders, so I have to change scoops. They won't have to do that. We'll try and make it as simple as possible in that respect. One of the other huge things that is a change for us is the sodium levels have changed, and they're now gonna be like watching closely the sodium products. They have put the target dates out farther for us to reach compliance with that, mainly because it's gonna take the manufacturers to reformulate their products. And they've given us, like by 2014, which is 2 years out, for K-5 kids, they must have less than 1,230 milligrams of sodium. The next target date is 2017, it drops down to 930, and then by 2022, it drops even farther down to 640. So they're giving us that long time to help the manufacturers, but also to have everyone's taste adjust to that.
Is that, the sodium levels, the numbers you just gave us, is that per meal or per lunch and breakfast?
Per meal, for lunch, and they have different ones for breakfast too. There is the trans fat level, which the meals must contain 0 grams trans fat. And the limit on saturated fat is, there's only a limit on that, not on total fat, because if you limit your saturated fat, you're limiting down your total fat too. And that is less than 10% of our total calories. And like I said before, we will be going to a 3-year administrative review instead of every 5 years. That's, in a nutshell, what,
How many calories is that?
depends on the kind of nut. But it's, that's in a nutshell of the new guidelines, what they're gonna be. We already currently do a lot of these things. Our milk is already fat-free, or the low-fat milk that we use. The breading on our chicken products that we use, like our chicken nuggets and our chicken tenders, our chicken patties, is already a whole grain enriched product with that. We are doing, fruits and vegetables being offered every day. The challenge will be coming when it's doing menu planning to make sure we get in those different groups. And on our leafy green vegetables, increasing the portion size on that. Those types of changes. And then the other big challenge will just be ensuring that when each child goes through the point of sale, that they have the fruit or the vegetable on their meals, on their trays.
So it doesn't sound like, it sounds like a lot of the increased work or areas we have to pay attention to are on the part of the planning for you and whomever else you currently have in your office. And then in terms of the cost of food, I know we get a 6-cent per meal increase
Right.
in reimbursement,
And
but
they haven't quite figured out how that's gonna happen for us.
And I know that one of the concerns of the National School Boards Association has been, and granted, some of this was coming out before we knew exactly what the regs were, or the rules, and what the IOM was gonna say, Institute of Medicine, but the concern was that this was going to cost us more than 6 extra cents per meal.
Mhm.
And I know we have been operating food services, I believe, without having to have any sort of subsidy coming out of our maintenance and operation, our general fund, so to speak. And is that what we continue to see being the case going forward, where we don't have to provide any sort of subsidy?
That's my plan, to do that. You know, we do breakfast in the classroom with all of our students, and that has helped with our revenue on that end. And so that, yes, I anticipate our costs will definitely go up. I, a few weeks ago, looked at just the cost of what a bag of the salad mix that we currently use versus a bag of romaine lettuce. And just that itself is $5 more a bag. So you consider, take that out times however many bags we use a day. And yes, it is gonna go up, but we will be okay with that. We will continue to be self-supporting.
And are we anticipating any increases in the cost for those who are self-pay, or not, the small number who are not free or reduced lunch?
Not at this time. Currently our lunch meal is $1.25, and I think we have to look at our students in our district and those that do pay. Sometimes it's hard for them to even meet that $1.25. So, at this time, I'm not anticipating raising costs. I know there are some districts out there that lunch costs $2. I don't know that we could handle that in our district.
Thank you.
Is the administrative review a recommendation or a requirement?
It's required.
So there's a bill in the state legislature that allows districts to opt out of, I believe, the breakfast program.
Is it breakfast
The
and
federal
lunch?
nutrition,
Oh, the whole thing.
So how do those two affect each other?
As I understand, that would be, you would not receive any federal reimbursement for your meals. It's not something I would recommend us doing.
Right.
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 So they
And the
wouldn't
bill sponsor
review-
They
doesn't
would-
expect that large districts with large free and reduced populations, he doesn't anticipate it would be advantageous to them at all to opt out. It's more, he's trying to provide flexibility to districts with smaller free and reduced lunch population.
And I think maybe to schools like charter schools or some of those types of schools, but
They already do.
So there won't be any review of what schools who are not participating in the free and reduced lunch or a national nutrition program are serving and doing?
that's the way I would interpret that, but I'm not for sure. I know that our administrative review, which I believe we will have next year, it's quite an extensive review in that they are here for a week. They review applications, or the school lunch applications, to make sure they're done correctly. They go to the site. Actually, they choose 2 sites and go to them and watch lunch meals, lunch service, breakfast service. It's pretty grueling, a little stressing.
Oh, and I have another question about breakfast in the classroom.
Uh-huh.
Those 10 minutes, so those are allocated on top of instructional time, in addition to not cutting into
Right.
instruction.
They're the 10 to 15 minutes at the start of the school day, but it's not instruction.
Thanks.
Right. Any other questions? So
Thank
some
you
big
so much.
changes and, but we'll work with them.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jordan. Our next item under general is the proposed revision